Welcome to the Miami Corona Project Conversations. I'm so honored today to have one of our great community leaders. Her fellow teachers elected her on February 17th to be the first Latina UTD president in our history. With 14,000 members, it is the largest local union in the entire southeastern United States. And I'm proud to call Karla Hernández-Mats my friend. She's a mom who is a former preschool teacher. She did that for 10 years before becoming the secretary and officer of the UTD in 2013, at which time she was the first Latina officer of the organization, and clearly rewarded her for her leadership by her peers just a few months ago to become our first president. And my God, what a baptism by fire for you, right? to to be elected on February 17th, and just a few, literally weeks later, here we are. First of all, before I get into the incredible work that UTD does and has done, I have family members who are members of UTD, and it's obviously a important civic group in this society because you're educating our future. But before we get into UTD, how are you? How's mom, homeschooling mom? Hardworking mom, political, business, civic leader mom doing?
I feel busted. I feel that's the best way to describe it. I mean, under this makeup, there are dark circles. There are dark circles under this makeup. It's very exhausting. It's very exhausting as an educator. I know that my colleagues are working really hard on much longer hours to really have the amount of commitment and dedication that they're having with their students. But I think overall, I mean, we are like zoomed out. Everybody's having all these Zoom meetings, which take a lot more time because everything has to be scheduled. I'm still working full time. And then, of course, teaching two elementary age kids at home that are in two different grade levels is quite the task. So I don't think I'm doing anything extraordinarily good. I'm just kind of swinging by.
No, I think you're doing an incredible job. I've actually seen you voice your concerns for your teachers in public ways, and also voice some of the ways that this pandemic has personally impacted and affected you, a household with a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old on top of everything else. So how has the pandemic impacted you personally? As you're a first generation American, your family's from Honduras, you're here, you're part of this beautiful mosaic, just like me. I'm the first generation from my family. Mom and dad were also born elsewhere in Cuba. And I just, in this beautiful fabric of a mosaic of my community, as I look around, I see how it's impacted it. Just from your perspective as Karla, how has this pandemic, how have you witnessed, how has this impacted you?
It has personally hit our home, and it's made everything real because we watch this on TV. We see what's going on. You hear about the lines and the testing facilities and testing deficiencies. I mean, and I can attest to what's happening and how messed up the system really is. So
Yes.
I'll briefly tell you, I've had 5 family members test positive. 2 of them, my parents, my mom and my dad, 2 aunts and an uncle. My uncle was the first one to be detected, and he found out that he was positive 9 days after the fact. And so within those 9 days, he had visited my parents' house. He had visited with my aunt, who are the other family members that tested positive. But from testing to just seeing, the resources that are out there. My parents are right now trying to figure out if they're finally negative, if they have the antibodies so that, they can start this new phase of what it is to live after COVID-19. And, it's just been really, really tough for the entire family, seeing them struggling. My uncle was hospitalized. He was on a ventilator for 3 weeks. For a really long time, we thought he wasn't going to make it because they actually told us he's not going to make it. And, we're faithful folks. I have so many friends that were praying for my family, and, I thank them, and he's pulled through. He's off the ventilator. He was in doctor's hospital for 40 days, and now he's at a rehab center. So, it's real, and the being asymptomatic and spreading this disease is also very real. And so it worries me right now when we hear so much talk about loosening restrictions and about reopening places and getting back to normal life. Because once you've seen the actual impact, once you've lived it, and you realize, that there are over 80,000 people, Americans, that have died in this country, it is a wake up call for everybody. Or should be.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that you have gone through that. I obviously knew some of that and was pulling for you. And I'm glad that your uncle is now out in rehab and that your family, for now, looks like they're coming through this.
They're on the mend.
As
Yeah.
a political leader, you need to walk the walk, right? You need to be able to stand in the shoes of those you represent, and clearly you did that as a special ed teacher for 10 years in the classroom, which is what gives you incredible voice as a political leader, as a person who's advocating for your teachers. And now the crisis isn't just about what happens in the classroom, but how those in the classroom can infect others, including teachers just like you who have elderly parents that they come into contact with. And I just know that, and as unfortunate clearly as it is that it's impacted you, it's giving you voice to be able to communicate how important it is for not just the 14,000 teachers who are your members, but for all school teachers across Miami-Dade County, to be protected. And I just want to talk a little bit now how, as not as Karla, but as the president of the largest local union in the southeastern United States who advocates for her employees, what are the issues that teachers are facing today?
So, in terms of distance learning, we see all the inequalities that exist are highlighted, magnified, amplified. I mean, children that live in most poverty, we're seeing how this is, very specifically impacting them. We know that some of their parents are these essential workers, right? They are the bus drivers and the TWU workers that are still out there. They have their parents are nurses, or, all these different essential workers that are going to work. And so you have a group of kids that are home alone, or they're
Yep.
taking care of their siblings, or then you have the other spectrum too, which is families that have completely, everybody has lost their income. They have, in many cases, not furloughed, they've just been told that they're no longer employed with the company that they were working with. And so now you have families that are struggling to make ends meet. And so when you have families that are worried and they're talking about making their ends meet, your priority is not education right now. It is not about logging on. It is not about doing your reading, math, or science assignments. It is about how are we going to survive so that we can actually live, and buy groceries and have lights the next month. And so, we're seeing, all these disparities. We see special ed students. I'm a special education teacher. And so a lot of these kids, depending on the gravity of their disability, they may have access to a computer, but doesn't mean they can use a computer, right? If they may have a physical impairment that doesn't allow them to use it. They may have a cognitive disability that doesn't allow them to follow simple instructions. So they're losing out on education. Poverty is losing out on education. Immigrant children who are scared to go to school and pick up a device are losing out because of education, are losing education because of COVID-19. And so all these things that we talk about, and we fight for social justice, and we want equity in our classrooms and equity through public education, all of these things are being amplified. We also see teachers and how they're struggling too. They're struggling to balance their private life. They're trying to figure out how to communicate best with parents, communicate best with students, and they're worried when they cannot communicate with certain children that they know they haven't logged on for weeks. What's going on? Are they okay? We see a spike in domestic violence. What's going on in those families. So it really has heightened our awareness of all the inequities and inequalities that exist in our society. And it's really sad, but also powerful, because now everybody's seeing them. You see the people who don't have the ability to go to the doctor, the people who don't have the ability to even have something as simple as you and I may think of it, as having Wi-Fi or having a device, right? Having a computer, having a telephone. And then you have families that don't have any of these things. And now it's a wake-up call for everybody of what's happening in our society and why, as a United States, a developed country, the land of hopes and dreams, why is it that we have so many Black and brown communities that are going through this? And what does it really mean and say about us and our governmental system?
I'm going to ask you about what to do after we get through this pandemic to fix some structural issues that we have in the country, the ones that have been exacerbated by this pandemic, with full awareness that this is not our last pandemic, that with climate crisis, there will be more virulent, more fatal, more contagious diseases that will be brought here as the climate warms and as insects and organisms that weren't supposed to be here come to us, and as we continue to deforest and make animal to human transmission something that was a rarity, something that's more common. But before I get to what fight we need to have once we can get through this pandemic, I want your recommendations, locally, to your school board and also to the governor and the legislature as to what needs to happen today to help those teachers, to help those students, to prepare us for kids who have lost education because of the very issues you determined, and to teachers who have been, maybe not compromised with the virus, but compromised in their lives by having to bring a classroom literally into their living room screen and into a place where they can't communicate, assess, and understand the kids in the way they would have done normally. What do you need government to do now to protect our students and allow our very best, our teachers, to educate them in this?
So what we need them to do is be leaders, which, you would think it's something simple to do because they got on the ballot and they were elected to lead. And we see so many of these so-called leaders hiding behind other folks. This is not about D's and R's. This is not about your political philosophy, ideology. This is about human beings. This is about life. This is about safety. This is about health and the well-being of entire communities. And we see too many, and I'm going to just go ahead and say it, I'm going to call them fake leaders because they're not being true to what the title of their positions hold. They're hiding behind policies because they want to do right by their party lines. And it is incorrect. And it is something that is devastating our communities. When you see from the national government all the way down to our state governor, all the way down, when you see people talking about reopening and talking about doing certain things without listening to sound scientific advice, when you see people putting money and greed over the health and welfare of people, we know that we want to reopen at some point. We know that people are struggling, but we have to do it in a manner that is safe because just because they need to make money doesn't mean that you're going to send them off to die so that they can make money. And what we're seeing is, our governors, our state, our national leaders are being stingy in a situation where they need to abundantly give. This is a crisis moment. I was baffled a few weeks ago. We found out that a local charter school, Jose Marti, had gotten like $100 million in grants. Okay, this is during a pandemic, and we haven't been able to get that much for public schools. This is one school, one charter school. Again, this is politics, right? This is doing, what the priorities are for particular policy leaders. Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education, cares about privatizing public schools. So, of course, she's going to give grant money and award these grants to these for-profit organizations. Yet our public schools that are educating our students, that are giving devices, that are, have distributed over 2 million meals to the community at large, that is trying to engage and create some kind of normalcy, virtual counseling, virtual graduate. I mean, I can go on and on and on about the things that our public schools are doing. We are treated like the red-headed stepchild. We have 90% of all kids in the nation, not just Miami-Dade, nationwide. 90% of children are taught in our public schools, and we are given little to nothing in terms of resources. So, but
Yeah.
then it comes back to the state, right? Now we have a governor who there's not going to be a special session. So he's going to sit down, and now he has veto power. What is he going to veto? What line items is he gonna take off to help this community? Is he gonna veto those tax loopholes for big corporations so that those that tax can generate income and be redistributed and help working people, families that are in crisis? Or is he gonna turn a blind eye and say, those are the corporations, or those are the tax loopholes that then fund me and fund my political agenda and help me campaign. So I'm not going to touch their budget line, but I'll touch other budget lines like healthcare and education, that he thinks he can do without. There's so many things that we see, so many things that become extremely apparent, and how wrong our government is, and how selfishness and really just ambition to go to the next, have your next political move, how all these things are being impacted, but not just how they're being impacted in a very kind of surreal. This is real. Like, these are families, these are children, these are our neighbors. We have a system of unemployment that continues to crash
Yeah.
on purpose. On purpose. It's not because there's a glitch in the system. It is systematically done in a way to not allow people to file for unemployment. And it is a system that has the money. The funds are there. And so we see what true intent is. We see why it's so important that we make good decisions when we go out to the polls. And that's something that scares me, because this is an election year. How is COVID-19 going to impact our elections? Are people informed? Do people know who's running? Are we going to sign up for absentee ballots so that we can get people who care about the environment, so that we can, elect people that care about education, about health? There's so many aspects that are directly impacted by our vote, and folks cannot sit back and say, my vote doesn't matter. Your vote does matter. And the census matters, and we have to get counted, and
Yeah.
there's so many different things. And I just hope that people aren't just down on the whole situation, but that they're taking this moment to be critical about the government, to be critical about what they're doing or what they're not doing, and say, okay, I see these deficiencies. Here's what I'm going to do about it. And here's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to have my neighbors and friends do about it as well.
I know that the issues that you're talking about are the structural change we need, because that only happens in a democracy through those who we elect into office. I know that UTD endorses candidates who understand that we need to take care of schools that don't get to cherry pick who gets to attend the school, who counsels, cares for, educates, and makes the civic society that will elect those future leaders happen. So I know that every year I look at the UTD candidates that are endorsed by you, and I just encourage that people understand how this is not a beauty contest, that these elections matter, because the people you elect at the local, state, and national level literally create policy that is the difference between life and death. Literally, the difference between life and death in your household, and how these funds that all come from our tax dollars get redistributed into who and why. So I so appreciate your leadership. The answer of this structural change is, yeah, it's by us opening our eyes and understanding the consequences of our action, who we vote for, or inaction when we decide not to vote. I think if we can continue advocating for our teachers, supporting you in your work collectively as a community, because of course each and every one of us, Miami High class of '82, is impacted by teachers. We just need to make sure that we understand what our priorities are moving forward. And I just really, really want to thank you. I know you're super busy as a homeschooling educator, as a political and civic leader, as a caretaker for family members, and as friend to so many. Taking this time to talk to me a little bit about this pandemic here in Miami. And I wish you all the support as you move forward and lead us.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor to serve, and always looking forward to opportunities to really share an important message, which is how valuable public education is. I mean, look at how great you are and the things that you're doing in our community. And public education is a great equalizer, and it impacts so many other industries. So yeah, make sure that you sign up for your absentee ballot. Make sure that you do your census, and check us out on the website whenever you can. United Teachers of Dade.
UTD.org, right?
Yeah, UTD.org.
Awesome. Great. Will do. All right.
Thank you.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
You too.
Okay, bye.